Alright, here we're going to take a look at example number 7. Use given information to find the exact values of the rest of the trig functions. Include a drawing to represent the situation. So, first I'm going to take a look at the two functions I'm given, sine and secant. So those two I already have down here. So sine is going to be negative 2 over 5. Now, secant is going to be 5 over square root of 21. So those two functions I already have, because that's what I'm given. So my task here is to go ahead and find cosecant, cosine, and tangent, as well as cotangent. And in order to do that, I've got to make sure that I include a drawing with that. Now the first thing that I want to do is take a look at my where my trig functions are always positive. Remember our ASTC, all students take calc, so everything is positive in this quadrant. Sine is the only thing positive in quadrant 2. Tangent and its reciprocal cotangent are the only two things positive in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 4, cosine and secant are the two positive trig functions in that quadrant. Now, when I take a look at my given information, I'm told that sine value is negative. So sine can only be negative here in quadrant 3 as well as quadrant 4. Those are the only two parts where sine could be negative. Now secant, remember secant and cosine are my reciprocal functions. So where cosine is positive, that's where secant will be positive. And that is going to be here in quadrant number 4 as well as quadrant number 1, because everything's positive in quadrant number 1. Now, the one quadrant where I have both an X and an O is in quadrant 4. So when I go to include my drawing, I'm going to want to draw my right triangle in quadrant number 4. Theta, my angle, would be right on the inside closest to the origin. Now, what I want to do is go back to my relationships here, y over r, for sine of theta. So that means my y-coordinate is going to be negative 2, and my radius is going to be 5. Now, I can find my other piece, my missing part right here, one of two ways. Either I can use the Pythagorean Theorem, 5 squared minus 2 squared is going to give me this side, the square of this side. And that'll be my x-coordinate. So I could have 25 minus 4 equals x squared. I'll get 21 for x squared. But when I square root that side, I end up with the value that I want to use for this. Because remember, I get two values when I take the square root, positive square root 21 or negative square root 21. I want to take a look at that, and the value that's going to go up for this x-coordinate, because I'm in quadrant 1, is going to be the positive square root of 21. If I was in quadrant 2 or quadrant 3 and I had to find that x-coordinate, then I'd want to use the negative square root of 21. That's one of the ways that I can find this missing side right here. The other technique that I could use, I could take a look at secant, and my secant function, I have r over x. So I'm told right there in the beginning that my x value is square root 21. So I could have either used Pythagorean Theorem to find the missing side, or I can just pick it up right from my given information. Once I've got my triangle drawn, then it's just a matter of plugging the pieces into my trigonometry relationships. For cosine, I want x over r, so I'd have square root 21 over 5. For tangent, now I have y over x. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of rationalizing possibly, because my y-coordinate is negative 2. And my x value is square root 21. Now remember, math people don't like the square root on the bottom. We have to go through that process of rationalizing. So I would multiply both the top and the bottom by square root 21 and come up with negative 2 square roots of 21, all that over 21. Now I can't reduce negative 2 over 21, so that's fine. I just go ahead and leave my fraction like that. Now, when I go to do cotangent, that one is just going to be, again, x over y. So this time I'm going to have square root 21 on top and negative 2 on the bottom. For cosecant, again, I look at the radius r and the value that I have for y, and when I plug those values in, my radius is going to be 5, and my r value is going to be, or my y coordinate is going to be negative 2. Now notice again, cosecant and sine, those are reciprocal relationships. One is just the inverse of the other one. Same thing is true for secant and cosine, as well as tangent and cotangent. Each one of those pairs are all reciprocal relationships. So that'll be something that we'll have to make sure we memorize and we know solid and know cold, because that's going to come into play in other areas later on as well as right now. So that is how we find all the remaining trig functions besides the two that we are given for this particular situation.